Cubs are definitely in the market for a catcher. But who is that catcher going to be? And could it be Danny Jansen, the guy that the Cubs were kind of linked to last year at the deadline, but instead was traded to the Red Sox? We're going to get into that and more right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up. That's a great way of saying go Cubs. Thanks for being here. And let's get the show started. And again, go Cubs, everybody. Peace, everybody. Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel. I'm your friend. I'm your buddy. I'm your bleacher bum neighbor, right? At least I would be if I could be. Mick Gillespie. Thanks for being here and hanging out at Broadcaster Mick. And appreciate all of you guys for hanging out, man. It's not baseball season, but I feel like I'm in the bleachers today, and I'm looking down, and I'm going, okay, what are we going to do with the catcher position? And I'm starting to read some reports, and they're saying, hey, what about Danny Jansen as a guy that the Cubs could sign, right? Who is Danny Jansen, and would he be an upgrade from what we have right now? Well, Miguel Amaya obviously was the youngster last year. We thought that Yan Gomes would be the catcher, and then that we could rely on, and then, we would be able to swing over and then, use the experience to help Amaya kind of build into the position, but it just didn't turn into that. Gomes wasn't good, and then it got a couple guys off of the the scrap heap, and honestly, Christian Bethancourt was pretty good. Now he's a free agent and he's gone, so they didn't feel like he was a long-term fit, but he was probably the best of all of them that were there. And then Miguel Amaya stepped up and probably felt the pressure of the fact that Bethancourt was pretty good. And he played a lot better at the end of the season than I thought he was capable of. And I think that kind of cements the fact that he'll be back unless maybe they trade him in a deal to get like a premier catcher. So you go to the minor leagues next. And the guy that, prospect wise, that is going to get the most attention is Moises Ballesteros, prospect in the organization, but he's mostly a hitter. And when we saw him in Double-A, he was playing more first base than he was behind the plate. Pablo Aliendo is a better and I would say more likely everyday catcher, although I don't know that he'll be a everyday catcher in the big leagues, but they were both on the same Double-A team. And then Pablo got hurt and Ballesteros started playing more, and then they moved him to AAA, and he's definitely caught. But there's still a lot of questions about his ability as a backstop. Now, he's a really good left-handed hitter, great hands, he's showing power. He's someone that the Cubs would love to be able to put behind the plate, but is he capable of doing that at the major league level? And now that the run game, too, is starting to become part of what teams do on a regular basis in the major leagues, it's a question that the Cubs are going to have to answer. And for him, it's just going to have to be where he's going to be asked to continue to get better behind the plate. And the more games he catches, the better off the Cubs will be. But is he ready to be an everyday catcher in the big leagues? The answer to that is no, right? So then you take a look at this guy, Danny Jansen, and you see different people in the business to say, hey, you know what? This is a guy to keep an eye on for the Cubs. They were kind of linked to him last year at the trade deadline. And, he's 29, going to be 30. He was with the Blue Jays, and he was someone who had put up some pretty good numbers and actually had hit for power. And that was where teams felt like, hey, this guy could really be potentially a good player. 2023, he hit 17 home runs, and he had 53 runs batted in. Now, he only hit 228, and his on-base percentage was 312. But you know what? He's got good plate discipline. I think that's one of the things that scouts have told me that he, last year he walked 40 times, and the on-base percentage was a little bit better because of that, right? But the problem was he just didn't get a lot of hits. So ended up hitting 205 for that season. And in his career, he's a 220 hitter, right? But like I said, he's got some power, some power to the pull side. He is experienced behind the plate. And the other thing for the Cubs, which maybe they feel like, hey, this guy is someone, that, like I said, he'll be 30 in April, that you could eventually use as, someone that could help you back up. I don't know that he's the guy that the Cubs would want as their everyday catcher, but the other thing is he'd be affordable. So, if the Red Sox don't re-sign him, he'd be a free agent. There's not a lot of catching right now in the major leagues. Last year, 9 home runs, 24 batted in, and he hit 205. And you look at those numbers, they're just not that good. But it's a position where you're just not seeing a whole lot of offensive productivity. Now, if I'm the Cubs, and the thing that really baffled me is that the Cubs didn't draft any catchers. So, okay, what are you going to do? Well, when Jim Hendry was GM of the Cubs, one of the things he did really well was convert position players that they didn't think were going to be able to hit at the major league level, but maybe they were a shortstop or a middle infielder. Steve Clevenger was one of those guys, Robinson Chirinos being one of those guys, and turn them into a catcher. And both of those guys got to the major leagues. So that's another area where you could take somebody and say, hey, man, we don't know that you're going to hit that well. But you can hit some, but we really want to have some depth catching, and we feel like that's where you're going to be able to do it. Or maybe you're just not a great runner. Steve Clevenger was a left-handed hitter. He was a good hitter, but wasn't, maybe they felt like, well, he's defensively, he's not going to be good enough as a middle infielder. They converted those guys. Former Cubs catcher Jody Davis was part of the group that worked with those guys to get them ready for the major leagues, to transition. And, the Cubs had always had really deep catching, it felt like, in the organization. And then recently, when they didn't end up signing Wilson Contreras, you thought, well, maybe they have a game plan here to go out and bring somebody else in to catch, and it just hasn't materialized. It's the weakest position on the team right now is catcher. So is Danny Jansen someone that they could look to maybe fill that void? I mean, he'd bring you some experience, but I don't know that he's that much of a step up from what you're kind of looking at already, and compared to some of these other guys. Now, in this position, though, sometimes you have a guy that hits like that, but they're just a great leader, and they're amazing behind the plate. They're throwing guys out. They call great games. They're leaders in the clubhouse, and so you can't always look at the offensive numbers when it comes to catchers and say, hey, this is the only thing that we can do to put someone in the spot that's going to hit a bunch of home runs. You may give up the offense to get somebody that's excellent defensively. I don't think the Cubs had either one of those things last year. And I think that this is an area where if you're going to make some trades and you're willing to give up some of your big time prospects, obviously pitching, but secondly, catcher. And when you look around the game of baseball right now, it's not like there's a bunch of teams that have excellent catchers. Or maybe you look at the Cardinals and you say, hey, you know what? We'll take Willie back. You just got to be careful. You trade with those guys and you make a mistake and you give up a player like Lou Brock, where you never hear the end of it. And the Cardinals are really good at being able to go out and find talent. At least they have been in the past. So we'll keep an eye on this. Thought it was worth talking about, as we go through the offseason and we look, all the indicators are that the Cubs are not interested in going out and spending a bunch of money on free agents. And is that going to take them out of the Juan Soto sweepstakes? Well, it feels like that, unless they're just bluffing, which you just never know. I don't know why they would. If your strategy is not to spend, why would you tell everybody that? You at least put yourself in the mix and then just be like, that's a deal that didn't work out, because the fan base right now is not happy because they're looking at this roster and going, hey, if we added some big time players, then the potential for this team to win a World Series would go way up. And I've mentioned it before. The other part of this that's tough is that if you have a front office signed to a 1-year contract, you're probably not going to be willing to let them go out and spend a whole lot of money. So Jed Hoyer and those guys need to have a successful year, and then win that confidence over, get that contract extended, and then maybe they open up the purse strings a little bit and go out and sign some players. So anyway, get in the comments section. Tell me what you guys think. We'll get back together with you again, hopefully tomorrow. Looking for just kind of reading the tea leaves, seeing what's going on with this roster and the free agent market. And, I'd love to see the Cubs really hit the bullpen pieces hard, guys that they can rely on to win some games in the bullpen. There's some out there. You're going to have to spend for those. They're going to have a little bit of money in that area, without having to pay Kyle Hendricks, without having to pay Drew Smyly. But, how much? And then, are they going to go over the cap? And then a lot of teams don't like doing that. So anyway, like, subscribe, thumbs up, hit the bell. Thanks for hanging out with us. Go Cubs.